read this?
No.
Like I'm gonna have to.
I'm really interested in it though.
Okay, we're gonna definitely have to talk about it lately because this is a rare one where I have like asterisks besides like everything I think about it. So that was really interesting. And then today, okay, I was waffling, wavering, whatever you want to say, back and forth because this asterisk, I always have asterisks. I'm gonna have time to read both of these, so it's not like put a gun to my head. But I'm gonna read both the Justice of Kings and Never Die, and I should have time to read both of those this month. So I did start Never Die just because I'm reading this with Theo, and he already started it. He's gonna be on airplanes all day today, so Theo's probably gonna finish this today because he's gonna be in airports and on airplanes all day, and it's like 230 pages. So yeah, I'm planning to get to both of those before the end of the month, and then I am of course still slow rolling this. And honestly, I'm doing about a chapter or two every night at bed. And it's making it take forever, but I'm actually kind of enjoying like just savoring it, like by taking small bites because these are small chapters. So every night I'm reading like 10 or 15 pages, then I put it down and I just pick it up again the next night. And it's kind of frustrating to be reading at such a slow pace, but it is kind of nice to make yourself slow down. Like when you're someone that reads 2 or 3 books a week, it is kind of nice to slow down and just be like, hey girl, like chill, just little bits. So anyway, that's what I'm reading. I'm drinking coffee. I'm a little energized this morning. I'm not always so like bright and bushy-tailed, but I had to put on my best face here. This is my little Sebastian mug. Does anybody else like Parks and Recreation? Anyway, little Sebastian.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm looking forward. Both of those are on my TBR. Both of those books. Good. And you saw Ian liked both of them quite a bit too. So, well, Jordan, why don't you just tell us what you're reading and what you're up to lately?
Good morning. I have iced coffee, even though it's 30 degrees outside. And I'm reading, speaking of Justice of Kings, I'm reading Tyranny of Faith right now. I have an arc of it. And I'm loving it. I'm like 80% in. I'm almost done. This morning I was like, if I didn't have the stream, I would be slamming through the rest of this. But that's my plan after this. Fire. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. And I love Justice of Kings, but this one is like just brought the world that much bigger. So loving it. But yeah, that's what I'm going to finish that hopefully today or tomorrow. So
cool.
Very cool. So Matt, what are you reading?
I'm reading chunky Malazan book.
Of course.
Bone Hunters. It's a reread for me. I know that already because I've read it once already. I know that this is one of my favorites. It's a stunning book with so much shit going on. It's really amazing. It's not very good for the readathon. Kind of stupid. It's more than twice as long as a big book for the readathon. So, yeah, I wasn't planning my TBR for the readathon. And I'm wearing my bathrobe to give it a brunchy feeling, but it's 4 p.m. here in Berlin, so I'm just drinking water. It's kind of between coffee and whiskey time.
Outstanding. Well, I didn't mention what I'm reading. I just started last night a very dry read. I just started the first volume of the Book of Lost Tales, Tolkien and Christopher Tolkien. Yeah. And I got as a gift the 12-volume set of the history of Middle-earth. And the plan was to read one per month. But based on the first one, I might stretch that out a little bit because it's really, really dry. It's very, very historic type writing. And in fact, there's more, at least in the first, I read about 100 pages last night. In the first 100 pages, there's more Christopher Tolkien explaining things than actual writing of J.R.R. Tolkien. So not enamored with that right away. So it doesn't read as well as I read the Great Tales, of course, Silmarillion and all of that. I enjoyed all of that thoroughly. In fact, Unfinished Tales is probably my favorite of all of those. But this one's pretty dry. And it's not for the readathon either, even though it's SFF. I have one more to do for the readathon before I'm done. So, but we'll see. We'll see what it's like.
Yeah, it's kind of scary for the readathon. I mean, I'm reading this. I'm 2/3 through. That means I only have 500 pages to go.
Only. Well, and someone's reading the new. I guess Miggins is reading the new Ryan Cahill book, which is like 1,400 pages or something silly like that.
Ouch.
It's wild.
Yeah. It's apparently about the same page count as Oathbringer. I think I read that somewhere.
That tracks.
Which is craziness. But got a Malazan fan. Yeah, I think I saw Glenn. I think I saw you tweeted you're reading Dead House Gates right now, I believe. I'm looking forward to that one. But
yeah, after I watched Jordan's video about Gardens of the Moon the other day, and I was like, I'm going to be the only person on this call who is like a hard pass on Malazan.
You made me so happy,
hard.
Jordan. Like
I liked it way more than I thought I would.
I so love watching new people read Malazan, and they actually get into it. You know, it's definitely not for everyone. So I can understand, like, Madison, no hate or anything, like, you know.
I just expected it to be way more confusing, and actually Kyle and Alex right now are reading Harrow the Ninth, and everyone knows how I feel about those books, and they were like, this is 1,000 times more confusing than Gardens of the Moon. So I was like, I went into this just fine.
And I wanted to ask you about that because, like, the way some people are talking about that, like Gideon the Ninth, Harrow the Ninth, I mean, they're acting like this will melt your brain, so pretty much just give up before you start. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like,
that's fair.
Okay. But like, because so I read Gardens of the Moon, and I like Gardens of the Moon because Gardens of the Moon is book 1, so you have nothing else in the mix. Like, I mean, there were times where I'm like, oh yeah, you're just being dropped into the story. Like, this is really big. But like, I've read a lot of fantasy, so I was prepared. I was like, okay, it might be difficult to track or whatever, but it's a book. Like, I've read a lot of books. I'm pretty sure I can do this. Gardens of the Moon, no problem. Dead House Gates, loved it. Dead House Gates, still to this day, favorite book of the series. Loved it. I just could not after that. I could not. So, again, it's not, and then people are like, well, you just don't get it. And I'm like, no, the thing is, I think I do.
No. It's not that you don't get it. The third book is actually one of the weaker books.
And I think that and this is my opinion, you guys, but I think the Malazan community ran me off, honestly. I
thought we were pretty nice.
Not as a whole, but not with being cruel or mean or anything, but with being kind of condescending, like a very, well, you just didn't get it. And I'm like, you're not leaving any room for the possibility that maybe I just didn't like it. Like, maybe I did get it, and it just truly isn't my preference. So that probably soured my experience a little bit, but I'm not saying I'll never come back around to it. But right now, it's just not interesting to me because I think I got a good enough taste of the style to know that, like, what my preferences are not his strengths. And his strengths are things that are kind of like take it or leave it for me. So I think it's just a preference thing. But
I think getting through like 2.5 books is enough to know if you're gonna like a series or not.
Yeah.
So I think that's fair.
I should have walked away then. But I was like held on by this. You know, like, I'm not letting go. I'm gonna read these. I was so.
That was me with Wheel of Time.
I was like, I'm gonna get through the whole thing, and it just was not a match at all.
Yeah, that was me with Wheel of Time.
Malazan is a very bad series to hate read. Because like if you're not into it, well, and just if you're not into it, it's not too complicated, but it is complex. There's a lot going on. And
there's nothing to bring you back. Like, so if you really connected with something in one book and you're like, oh man, you know, like I love this city, or I love this world, or I love this dynamic between these two characters, I want more of that, you're out of luck come the next book because it's gone. So
but you get them in the next book after that.
Yeah. And just
5 books down the road.
Like, we're all Hobb fans here, so we get that. Like, I am a character-driven reader, and I need emotional impact, and I never got any of that, which a lot of Malazan readers do. But I was like, I don't remember these characters. Why do I care?
It's a very different kind of emotional impact that you get. Like, what I think Erickson is genius at, he doesn't do what Hobb does. Like, he doesn't do super in-depth character work at all. But what he's an absolute genius at is character sketches. Like, he gives you very little, which says a hell of a lot. You know, you pick up a lot about the characters with very little writing. And I think he's pretty genius at juggling Like he's juggling a hell of a lot more characters than Hobb ever does.
Sure.
And he does it remarkably well. But yeah, it's not the in-depth, let's spend the whole book with somebody kind of character
Well, and
stuff.
you're just there for a different experience for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's a ridiculous thing to even compare the two. Like
Yeah.
Because it's
they're
just
not
two
related.
different everything. Yeah.
And
Every single live stream I've ever been on with you, Matt, we talk about Madison.
Of course. I mean, it was impossible not to, because I'm super excited. I mean, Josh didn't rate it quite high enough, but I'm super excited to see Josh read Gardens for the first time, to see you, Jordan, read Gardens for the first time. I've been in the chat on the Grimoire and just watching people go, I'm confused, but I love it. I'm like,
I'm ready
excellent.
for Ian to get further into it. He's reading it much slower than we did, which is probably the right thing to do. But I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what he thinks of it.
Yeah, and Alex's review, he enjoyed it quite a bit too.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, all these reviews are making me so happy.
Alex and I basically have the exact same reading taste, so if I like it, he'll like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I didn't like it as much, but I'm still looking forward to the series, just because, I mean, the thing I mentioned, I think when I was chatting with Philip, the one thing I mentioned is I see the people that finish the series just talk with such reverence about this series, and I just want to get in on that. So, I mean, I'm in for the long haul. I'd be really surprised if I don't finish, but I do have some of the same concerns like Madison brought up. I mean, for me, Hobb is the pinnacle of everything, and this is a very different kind of storytelling. So we'll see how well it connects for me.
Well, it's a big investment. So like if you're really comfortable and familiar with your preferences, like first of all, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but like I like to read the best of every stack. You know what I'm saying? Like I know that what my preference is. I know what I tend to be drawn to. But say there is someone who writes the best of the best when it comes to plot-driven stories, or the best of the best when it comes to straight magic. I want to read their stuff too, but I'm probably not going to get caught up too much anymore on the mid stuff and those other stacks, because I'm really getting comfortable identifying quickly like what I'm really interested in. And so that alone makes me think that maybe someday I will circle back around to Malazan, because it's a huge investment for something that's not your preferences. But if I, in a couple of years, if I have, maybe crossed a few more things off the checklist and I'm not feeling all this FOMO, like why am I spending 1,000 pages reading something that's frustrating to me when I know, like I hadn't finished Robin Hobb when I was reading Malazan. Like that's a lot of like all this stuff I want to read is over here, and I'm making myself read a 1,200 page book that just simply isn't catered to my preferences at all. Like I might respect
anything
it.
you feel like you're making yourself read, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there might come a day where I feel comfortable circling back around to that and being like, yeah, let's get back in here. Let's see what this is all about. But at the time, it was bad timing, because when you're reading something you don't really enjoy and there's so much FOMO, it's hard to even like allow yourself to pick out the parts, be like, hey, was great about it. This was great about it. This was done really well. It's hard to even see that stuff when you're just like, I don't even want to be reading this. So that was a me thing that I probably shouldn't have made the kind of like snap choice, be like, sure, I'll read it too.
I noticed the same thing like we were saying about like knowing your reading taste. When I was I tier ranked all the books I read last year, and I was like, I have like nothing at the bottom of the tier ranking list. And it's because I just know what I'm going to like and what I'm not. So if I'm not liking it, I'm not going to read it. I'll DNF it. I have no problems DNFing. But also I can pretty much know before I go into a book if I'm going to at least like it enough to finish it. So I just I don't have books I didn't really like because I don't read them. I know my preferences at this point.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I considered doing one of those tier list videos, and I was just like, I feel like it would be very crowded because I do have a couple books that I was just like, that wasn't for me, or, thanks, but no thanks. But for the most part, I do really like most of what I read.
Yeah, I think my bottom tier had 5 books out of the almost 100 I had on the tier ranking. So, yeah.
True.
I just shot a tier list yesterday for my book series that I read last year. I closed out 16 book series last year.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I did. This year will not be that total, but I did a tier list for it, and it's funny where mine got crowded was the B B tier, basically.
Yeah, that was mine.
I had
Mine
a
was
couple
the
at the
B and the
top.
C tier. Yeah.
Like my B tier is like all the way across, and there's like 2 at the top, like 1 at the very bottom, and so I
Yeah, I
guess
did
it's actually a pretty good bell curve, actually.
Yeah.
Now I think
Yeah,
about
that was mine. It was like, woo, yeah.
Yeah.
And on that scale, like, I think it's B tier is fine. Like, give me all the B tier because not every book I read needs to be a new favorite.
I had
And
5-star reads in my B tier, so
exactly. And so I'm like, as long as I feel like as long as I enjoyed myself while I was reading it, I think about it afterwards, and I would recommend it to someone else. That's enough for me to be like, yeah, I super liked it.
Yeah.
But to me, like a 5-star read, and everyone has their own rating system, and like I just get I feel so trapped by like the Goodreads 5-star. Like I hate it because I'm like, what? To me, there's so much space between 4 and 5 stars that I'm like, I feel the need to explain myself.
my 5-star reads vary so much.
I have a spreadsheet, and I have what I put in is a column that is a percentage. It's like 1 to 100. And then there's another column where it averages those out and rounds them off and makes them into stars.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
I hate looking at the star column because I'm just like, this book was an 82 and that book was a 97, but they're both 5 stars, which makes 5-star feel kind of meaningless.
For me, it
Yeah.
gets muddy with the lower ones because, like, if I had my way, 1 star would be did not like, do not recommend, bad book. 2 would be it was fine, it was pretty good. 3 would be, good book. 4 would be great book, and 5 would be one of my favorite books, perfect almost. But on Goodreads, if I see a 3-star rating, I'm like, ew. when I know in my mind, I'm like, no, 3 stars should be fine. Like 3 stars should be a B tier. But in my mind, I'm like, pass, 3 stars.
That's every time I give a book 3 stars, people are like, "Oh my gosh, you didn't like it?" And I'm like, "No, it was a good book. It was
why
fine."
is 3 stars bad? It's like I both see. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, 3 stars, that works. And then I see someone else give 3 stars though. I'm like, why did you hate it?
Yeah. What was wrong with it?
No, you're totally right, because I gave Gardens of the Moon a 3.5, and everyone said, "You hated it. I can't believe you hated that book."
What's wrong with you, Josh?
3.5 means it's kind of between liked it and really liked it. I mean, I enjoyed the book, but the stars are artificial. I still do the stars for Goodreads because you have to, but I'm going to do on my videos, just going to tier rank them with like verbal descriptors so that people understand them. Because like my A tier, I just call truly outstanding, like really, really great book. It's just not that S tier should be special,
Yeah.
So it's not like a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 type scale. And
yeah.
I mean, it's all artificial.
One goal I have this year for my channel, I suppose, is to, before the year is up, do a brand new top 10 fantasy series list and do a brand new, a first time ever, maybe top 10 books of all time list. And it's so intimidating to me because I take ranking things like very seriously. But I'm going to do some rereads this year because there's a few things that I don't want to default to a top tier on my ranking just because they're iconic, or I feel like everyone's going to be mad at me if I don't put it at the top or something like that. But like, I'm going to reread a lot of stuff this year and rank them based on just sheer enjoyability. Like when I was reading it, how did I feel about it? So I'm interested to redo that. But like, it does feel like there's a lot of pressure to
I've got my top 10 series coming out this week.
Sweet.
Yeah, I gotta read.
I feel like 5-star reads should be reserved for like favorite books, and so
it was really weird to me doing like. First of all, when I sat down to start listing things, I realized how many series I haven't read. I mean, I've been reading fantasy all my life, but I've been on and off, and
Same.
And I was including unfinished series, but I was only including series that I've read all of what's there. And I ended up grabbing way back to some things I read in my 20s because I was like, I've still got a really good impression of those, which will probably change as I read new series, and they will get on the list. Others will fall off. But I put like Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever and the Chronicles of Amber on there, which are, for me, pretty old reads. But I still think of them as really good. But there's so many other things that I just haven't gotten to yet, we'll see. And I don't do ratings. Like, if you're watching my review, it should be clear that how much I like the book.
Yeah, my
without me
ratings, I
saying
feel like,
5
are
stars.
My ratings are always more like, because I normally rate it right when I'm done with it. So, like I was talking, Justice of Kings made it in my top 10 books of the year, and Kyle was like, "Oh, but you only gave it 4 stars," and I was like, "That's because that was my feeling right when I finished it, and then I sat on it and ended up liking it better with time." So it was just like my Goodreads ratings are like just gut reaction stars. You know, it's
That's
like
a good way
not
to do
really
it.
that.
You know, mine are the same way. I think about it because I think back a few years ago, I read this book by Pete Hamill called Forever. And when I finished it, I gave it 4 stars. And then end of the year, it made my top 10. And it still sits in my mind like years later. Like it might be a top 10 of all time. And I gave it 4 stars when I finished it. But yeah, sometimes those books just stick with us for a while. And our perceptions of them change. And yeah, I find that interesting. And I guess most of us need to go update our Goodreads profile.
Yeah, my star ratings are also, before I like joined the book community as a whole, I was reading mostly like YA fantasy and stuff, and I basically gave every book I read 5 stars unless it was just like trash. So if you go back to a lot of those, it'll be like, you just loved everything, because I was like,
throws off your averages.
I was like, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so I was just giving 5 stars to everything.
It is kind of weird too, like being so fully immersed in the book community. Like we mingle with authors and stuff. And I mean, authors don't expect us to pander to them. Like I get that. Like they want honesty. But even just like your other friends and stuff, it is funny to like, I, for the longest time, just didn't read anything on Goodreads, like, because I just use it for tracking my own reads. But being a part of the readathon has really reminded me how important it is for authors to leave reviews. Like even if it's just a star rating and like 5 words, they're like, good book, I liked it. Like it helps them a lot. It helps with visibility and it helps with all that kind of stuff. So I am going to try to do better about that. But it is weird, like you said, when you can leave a good review and 4 stars, then you still have people like hounding you, like that's not good enough. Like why didn't you love it more? And I think from here on out, like I'm going to go maybe even back through my Goodreads and just really reserve 5 stars for things that I think have potential to show up on those lists I was talking about. Like top 10 all time, top 10 fantasy, like 5 star, I want to be God tier. And then the rest can just have fun hanging out in the 4-star category together.
Yeah.
If I could teach the entire book community anything, it would be that my opinion has nothing to do with your opinion.
Right.
And you can keep your opinion and it is in no way harmed by me disagreeing with you.
Right.
I've never gotten more comments than on my DNFing the Wheel of Time video. I got so many of the Wheel of Time bros coming at me in the comments solely because I mentioned the misogyny in Wheel of Time, and they were all like, you just didn't get it, and like all this stuff, and I was like, okay, thank you.
It's good for the algorithm.
Yeah.
A lot of activity on your channel. Yeah.
I got
exactly. Comments are comments and views are views, so bring it.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, people just they love something, so they want everyone else to love it, and it's a shame that when people don't, they sometimes attack. But but yeah, I hate that. But
the only acceptable exception to that is you're wrong about 3.5 stars.
Right.
No, as long as you're continuing on to Dead House Gates, then I will continue speaking with you.
No, I'm excited. It's
no, we're good because I read Dead House Gates. See?
You know, I did that. I did the vlog, and so many people commented,
which was cool, by the way. I like that.
It was fun to do, and it was funny because after I posted, I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, I repeated myself. I didn't even remember what I said because I repeated myself a few times, but I didn't edit it. I just let it go. But I had so many people comment that said that my experience was very similar to theirs, where it started out, it was great. And then they got a little confused about some things, and then it got better. And then I had several people say that they felt that Gardens of the Moon's the weakest in the book. And that if I was still mostly favorable about it, I mean, that of the Book of the Fallen, that I was probably going to enjoy the series. So that's where I feel. And like I said, I'm in for the long haul. I'm not going to abandon it because of some certain things I didn't like about the first book, because there are a lot of things I like about the first book, and I have a lot of questions about what happened in the first book that I know everybody says not all the questions are answered, but enough of them are. So
A
Yeah.
lot of questions get answered. And as someone who's rereading it now, I would say that most people that tell you that Gardens is the weakest book have only read the series once. Like, reading Gardens with the understanding that you get after reading the entire series, I was like, oh shit, there's a lot going on in Gardens that I get now, you know.
I love series like that.
Yeah, I mean, when you start it, like, pretty much everybody says either it was confusing DNF or it was confusing, but I loved it. You know, like, it is confusing, and it's intentionally confusing. It's not a mistake, you know.
And I know we love to like tell people like me, like, make me feel better, but being like, it's okay, it's not a series for everyone. Like, there's truth to that. But at the same time, I do feel like I'm the outlier. Like, I feel like the majority of people who stick with it absolutely love it. So, like, I don't want to ever, like, let my, hate, that's, I don't hate anything, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to let my experience detour people, because I'm like, I truly think that for most people, the journey is part of it, but the destination is worth it. So, like, I encourage people to read it, because I feel like I am one of the few that just couldn't ever make it click.
Certainly one of the cool things about Gardens is, if you do read on, you'll realize what a long game Erickson is playing, because there are a number of things that he starts in Gardens that blow up in book 4, or blow up in book 6, or blow up in book 9, or, that Gardens is connects a lot of things throughout the series. You don't see it at the beginning, right, but you'd be reading later and you'd be like, oh, wait a sec, is this that guy that we haven't seen since Gardens?
There's a lot of that. I sound like a broken record player, but that is exactly how I feel about the Locked Tomb series, because, like, I've read all of them now 2 or 3 times, and every time I go through, I pick up on things that, like, happened in Gideon at the very beginning that were telling you, like, what was going to happen in Nona. Like, there's like so much of that also, which you talking about Malazan makes me that much more excited for it, because that's what I love about Locked Tomb. So I think I'm gonna love Malazan, like, all the way.
The only thing I know about Locked Tomb is what you said, Jordan. It's necromancer lesbians in space.
Yeah,
I'm like, that sounds.
What more do you need to know?
Interesting, at least.
I think that is a misleading like tag for it, though, because I know some people went into it thinking it was going to be like a romance story, and it is not.
Okay,
it is not a romance story.
I'm not so big on the romances. I would
definitely be willing to give a try, because, like I said, on paper, Malazan was like something I was like, I'm ready for the challenge. I'm ready to have something to pay attention to. I'm ready for another world to, like, know inside out. Like, I was ready for another, like, fully immersed, because that's how I do things. Like, I like to become obsessed with something.
Oh, me
like
too.
like, when I tell you that I was obsessed with Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire it's my favorite fantasy series of all time. Like, I'm never going to get over it. I'm never going to move out. I'm never going to, like, release my claim there. But, like, I'm ready for another Westeros. Like, I'm ready for something else to completely. And I am getting that with Robin Hobb. Like, trust me, I've already started my reread, and, like, I want to be that person. I want to be Derry. You know what I mean? But, like, I love just getting completely into something and being like, oh, this is my notebook where I keep notes about what I read, and this is the person I talk to, like, I'm ready for something else like that. So I am interested in trying it, and it helps that it's 3 books, right?
It's gonna be 4. There's only 3 out right now.
Perfectly acceptable.
But yeah, it's definitely a shorter series than Malazan, and the books themselves are really not that long, like max 400 something pages. They're not nearly as, like, the world is not nearly as expansive as, like, a Robin Hobb book or something, but and it's much more like the second book. Take everything you read in the first book and throw it in the trash until the end. So it's like it's very confusing, but I love it so much. So,
well, I would definitely be willing to try that out sometime for sure.
I'd just like to say quickly, Chadia, do not listen to Mike.
I don't know if you guys saw that. Mike's answer was chaos.
That's Mike's experience of the narrative style. The narrative style is third person focused. multiple POVs, and the POVs change often. So other than one book, you have multiple POV changes within one chapter. In one book, there's sort of the first third of the book is one POV, one character, which is a real weird exception in the series. But otherwise, it's different POVs, sometimes every couple of pages. Sometimes it'll be one POV for a longer period of time. But I think Erickson uses that masterfully to hide things from you sometimes. So you get a POV who doesn't know what's going on with something, or often when something really big happens, he'll change POVs really often, like in the middle of a fight, change POVs so that you get totally different perspectives on the same event, which is very cool. But it does feel chaotic sometimes. So I can totally understand Mike feeling that it's chaos.
Chaos is a ladder.
Yeah. I love chaos. I'm here for it.
Is real.
And Theo popped into the chat. He's at the airport. Safe travels, Theo. Hope you have
fun reading Never Die today.
Uneventful day.
Yeah, everybody's reading Never Die, aren't they?
I'm reading it next month as part of my 12 books by 12 booktubers thing. So I'm excited.
I totally just fucked up my TBR this year. I started a read along of 16 books, Realm of the Elderlings, on my channel. I joined A Song of Ice and Fire read along. I joined what's the other one? Shogun read along, which I've already given up. I'm like, no, it's just too much.
I decided not to do Shogun too. I was like, I don't have the time for this.
I got you, Josh. I got
you. I committed to my Malazan reread, which has sort of been the basis of my channel since I started. So right now I've got every month, I've got one A Song of Ice and Fire, one Realm of the Elderlings, and one Malazan. And that's almost too much by itself. So
I think I'm going to start Clash of Kings after I finish Tyranny of Faith. Well, I'm going to squeeze in an Expanse novella, and then I'm going to read Clash of Kings, because I was like, my February is booked. I'm not going to have time to read all of these, so I'm starting early.
Well, I was kind of glad we spread out Malazan, because I'm not going to read Dead House Gates till March. We moved that to like the 15th of February to the end of March, so I'm moving that to March to kind of free things up. But my TBR is not nearly as crowded as what you guys are talking about, at least at this point. It'll get busy this summer when we start the Robin Hobb, the Soldier Son, and then Empire Trilogy on Alan's channel. Those will overlap. Plus Malazan will still be going on, so that's going to get clogged in the middle of the year for me. But
I'm already looking forward to June.
Yeah.
Because June will be when A Song of Ice and Fire is completely finished. Like if we're doing one a month, I will be completely done with it by then, and then I can breathe again.
I think I'm gonna reread Stormlight after that. So I'm just like really stacking myself up.
Yeah.
I think I'm going Stormlight next year, because I think the fifth book will be out next year.
Yeah.
So I think I'll probably do one every other month just to refresh my memory with all of that.
Yeah, I'm rereading them because Alex has never read them, and so I'm gonna reread them with him. So.
Yeah, I'm trying with this year with my TBR to just keep it to where I have like 3 or 4 things a month that I'm kind of locked in on. And then anything else I can fit in is just, what are other people reading? What sounds good? What do I have sitting on my shelf that, is calling to me? And I'm just really trying not to do this thing where I'm like, oh, I can probably read this many books a month. Let me plan that out, because I never end up actually doing it. And then I just feel like an idiot the next month where I'm like, hey, remember all those books I said I was going to read? I read none of them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I have some read-alongs going that are mostly like I'm personally myself, I'm rereading Harry Potter because it's just been really long and my daughter's reading them. So I was like, this is a perfect time to just visit that world again. I'm rereading Red Rising, just one a month leading up to the release of the new book.
I forgot I'm reading that too, starting next month.
I'm doing a Hobb reread alongside Matt, one book a month. And I feel like there's something else I'm rereading right now. Maybe not. Either way, so I have those. I'm doing A Song of Ice and Fire, but I read Storm of Swords with Roger in November. So I'm just going to put a pin in that and wait till everybody else is ready for book 4 and then just kind of jump back in. But otherwise, I'm just kind of leaving it loosey-goosey for things that I can be like, oh, there's a buddy read going for that. That sounds good. I'll jump in. Or like I said, Theo and a couple of their friends and I, like a week ago, we were like, hey, has anybody read this? And then we just randomly decided we'll read it next week. So I'm just trying to leave myself a lot of flexibility because I just feel like that is a much more natural like cadence for me.
So there, just to answer Chadia's question in the chat there, are we doing a Malazan discussion? Yes, Jordan and I, of course, with Ian and Alex, and a special guest, which we haven't officially announced. It's probably going to be, we're looking at February 20th is probably going to be our date, but it will be I think that was the date. Anyway, sometime in February, we'll announce it.
It was President's Day, whatever day is American President's Day.
Yeah. But we will be doing a discussion on Gardens of the Moon with the 4 of us plus a Malazan expert, and we will be doing probably the first part of it will be spoiler free, and then we'll talk spoilers afterwards for the second half of the video. And that's going to be on Alex's channel. So just stay tuned for that. But I'm sure Jordan and I and Ian will also be promoting it quite a bit. So
more Malazan content.
Yep.
Always good. Yeah, the Bone Hunters right now is making a Game of Thrones feel short.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, no doubt. So I don't have the order memorized yet. What book number
Bone
is
Hunters is 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still get them confused. Isn't that funny how sometimes you'll start a series and you're like, I'll never know all these book names. Like, especially with the Hobb books, I'd be sitting there like,
well, that's because they're all
inner
the Assassin's Fool and the Fool's Assassin, and
she had dice that had the different words.
Yeah,
No,
we never stop joking about that in
Assassin's
Hobb community, and I hope we
and
never do because. And here's why it is: because Robin Hobb is perfect. So you have to find something to make fun of her about, and there's 2 things you can do.
Yeah,
one is book titles. And one is naming. First of all, I like the naming conventions of the six duchies. I do. Like, not everyone does. I do. I like the having the names of characteristics,
qualities.
Yes,
but
some of
them are good. I don't like all of them.
But I don't like all of them. But I like the concept. But sure. I'm sorry, Bingtown, Kyle,
Bing.
Yeah. No, Brent. I think Brent's on here. When he was first started reading,
no idea where that
here,
came from.
I'll never forget that he was like, I'm sorry, but I can't take the Red Ship Raiders seriously because it sounds like something from Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Sounds like a football team.
The Red Ship Raiders.
It always sounds like a football team to me. It's like, the Red Ship Raiders versus.
Yeah. So I'm like, we have to make fun of her for something. So it's going to be names and titles.
Interesting. So Matt had a question for me. Different Matt, one of my other friend Matt's in the chat there. If I find it difficult to do read-alongs with people due to how quickly I read books, absolutely. That's why most of the time I actually, like, if we start on a certain date, I usually start later. Like, we're doing Dead House Gates from February 15th to April 1st. I probably won't start it until mid-March. So,
I felt bad because me, you, and Alex finished it like within the first week of January, and Ian was like, I'm 100 pages in.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, and Dead House Gates isn't too long.
Yeah, the first one, and I read them pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah. Bone Hunters is also one of my favorites. I mean, I'm kind of like, I don't know, top 3 for me would probably be Crippled God, Memories of Ice, and Bone Hunters, probably. But yeah, I suck at ranking things. I always, as soon as I decide on any ranking, I'm like, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I want to rearrange it. So
every time I try to rank the Sun Eater books, I'm like, I actually don't know.
I have a Sun Eater dilemma. I haven't read any of them. I want to read them.
You'll like them.
And there are 2 editions available. No, there are 2 editions.
Mm-hmm.
Only the really ugly one is available.
The hardcovers of the first 2 books are like impossible to find because
I don't even mind hardcover. I don't mind.
You can get the mass market
paperbacks, and I don't like mass market thick books.
So like the EU ones are
this piece
a little
of garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
miserable.
just, I hate it.
My Stormlight books, besides Rhythm of War, I read them all mass market, and it was a huge mistake. My hands hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping now that he's making the switch to, a publisher that's actually going to like pay attention to him and give his books the attention they need and the marketing they need. And like that was a disaster for him. But anyway, I'm hoping we will get like maybe a re-release by the end of the series or something, because it's a big problem. And those first 2 books in hardcover are getting harder. And well, the first book has been like an elusive, like hard to find item for a long time. But I'm hoping that he'll get it all straightened out and we'll have better access.
It wouldn't be such a problem if the covers weren't so gorgeous.
Yeah, they're stunning.
Yeah. You know, if they were just kind of average covers, you'd be like, this edition, that edition doesn't really matter.
Like whatever.
Yeah, but
they're too good. They're too good.
They're really nice. And
I love Howling Dark's cover.
If you put them next to each other, like Empire of Silence, one edition and the other one looks like a child's parody of it.
You know what's even worse, Matt?
So bad.
Do yourself a favor and later just open up a screen and hold up those, open up a window of the beautiful, American hardcover editions and look at those. And then on another window, pop open the audiobook covers.
Oh my God, the audiobook covers are so bad.
I haven't seen those.
They're seriously like not just AI created them, but AI in 2004 created them. I'm like, that is not anything about the vibe of this. So
did you see that Tor has actually the latest Malazan novel? They actually created the cover with AI. I'm like,
the Ian S.
What are you doing?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, it's
one of with the Christopher Paolini book too, and that's what like caused all the uproar on Twitter.
Man, crazy.
Stupid.
It's you mentioned that hardcover. I have just the eBay search that populates every day for me, giving me notifications for it, and I haven't found it for less than $100.
Yeah, me
now
too.
add to that difficulty being in Germany.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And wanting to get it in English.
Yeah. I just found out about how hard it is to get matching Malazan books that are the same height. I didn't know this was a thing, and I was like shopping, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm not going to own these for now.
It's hard.
I have the ISBNs if you want those. I found a spreadsheet somewhere that helped me find them, I ended up just please. I'll share that with you. I ended up just searching by ISBN I bought mine mostly on Abe Books, a couple.
And you have the UK trade, right?
I do, yeah. But it has all of them. It shows the American, the UK, all the different ones. And I was doing that because I've had horrible luck with used books on Amazon. It's always seemed to be third-party sellers that don't even look to see what edition that you bought. And so I've pretty much stopped using Amazon unless it's like brand new and I need it fast. So Abe Books was great for that because I could just search ISBN and only those ones would pop up.
Yeah, I love Abe Books.
I use Thrift Books a lot too because you can also like set up a notification that they'll email you.
Well, and I think it's Thrift Books is cool that they pull from everything. Like it's kind of like just a selling platform basically. So like you'll see stuff is being pulled from Abe Books and Better World Books and Half Off Books, and they pull from everything. Kind of like buying a plane ticket on Expedia or something. Like they're shopping all the sites.
What Andrea said is exactly my problem. The Rockio covers from the UK are horrible. The UK covers, of course, are easier for me to get. Like ordering something like I can order a $20 book from the US and it'll cost me $20 in postage.
Yeah.
Right. So it's just not really an option. So if I can get the American ones over here, I can do that. If Amazon DE has them. Otherwise, I can pretty easily get UK covers, which sometimes is awesome. Like the UK covers of Realm of the Elderlings are better.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of the books that are better.
Yeah.
But the Rockio covers are garbage.
Do you read digitally at all?
Not anymore. I had a period where I was moving kind of constantly, and I was traveling 3 or 4 months a year. And that my best friend was my Kindle, and I just had all my books on Kindle, and I was cruising around all the time, just reading Kindle and never buying paper. But now I have a nice flat in Berlin where I want to stay, and I have some nice bookshelves, and I'm kind of on a reading print phase at least.
I definitely go through phases where like I only want to read digitally for a bit, and then I'll switch to physical and just only read that for a bit. And I'm currently in my digital phase because I just got a new e-reader, so I've just been reading digitally.
It's not my favorite at all, but there are undeniable like pros, like such as being able to get a book instantly and not caring what the cover looks like. And so I was just thinking, because I want you to read Sun Eater so bad, but like I don't want you to not read it just because you can't have the actual copy of it that you want. So
you'll like Sun Eater.
That's a bit of the thing though, is I'm really in, like, of course I love reading good books, but I'm also in the middle of like physical book desire.
Yeah, no, that's real.
You know, and where I'm just like, I see other people's covers when they do a review, and I'm like, ooh, ooh, I want one
that's
of
why
those.
we like book hauls. I'm just like, show me.
Exactly. Actually, my insanely well-performing video, like for my channel anyway, is the one where I went through my Lord of the Rings editions. It's got like over 10 times as many views as my best other video, just because I have some nice editions. But I kind of want, I know, I mean, it was interesting actually recently. I was thinking about digital books, and I pulled out my Kindle that I hadn't used for a while, charged it up, and opened up my library with no filters, like just show me everything that's in there. And I just scrolled through it, and I was like, really? I read that? There were bunches of books in there where I'm like, I don't remember buying it. I don't remember reading it. Or I bought it like in 2019 and I've never read it. So yeah, suddenly my TBR is even longer automatically.
Yeah, a couple years ago, I DNF'd 3 books, I think. And all 3 of them were digital. And it made me start wondering if I don't always connect to the written word on the electronic page as much as a physical book that's tactile and that reading experience. I wonder about that, but I still use my Kindle quite a bit, especially when I travel. It's just too convenient.
I'm traveling. I'm doing like a 2-week trip to Japan later this year, and I already know I'm just gonna like. I know. When
are you going?
May.
Oh, you're going in May. I'm going in June. Yeah. Thing. It'll be nice. Take one Kindle with as many books as I need.
I'll have.
It's so good for vacations, especially because on vacation, at least for me, I like to predict what kind. I'm always like, what am I going to read on vacation? Duh, bitch, the same thing you read all the time. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm like, maybe I want to read a beach book. No, you don't. It's just nice to have a lot of options without having to bring a separate suitcase.
Especially long trips. It's like if you're going on like a 3-day weekend trip, you can bring 2 books. But when you're going on a long trip, it's like I would need to bring another suitcase of books.
Yeah, I don't know who that girl is. I don't know her. Like, I don't know what she wants to read.
Exactly.
All the trips I used to do, like I had a phase where I was doing like 4 countries in 3 months, like 3 months of constant traveling. So of course I was only carrying my Kindle, and I had like 500 books in my bag, and it was this big. You know, it's awesome. Yeah. But I totally agree with what Mike said. This is why I don't really buy many hardbacks. Because they just, like, in your hand, they're uncomfortable.
Your hands start to hurt. Yeah,
they don't really fit in your bag.
You get that, like, callus.
Yeah, exactly. You get a big dent in your hand.
I've been reading this in bed. I can't find my Kindle, which, like, something you need to know about me is I lose everything. I lose my Kindle, like, 3 times a month. And I know it's somewhere here. But the point is, I don't have it right now. And, like, reading not only is it 1,100 pages, but it's so floppy, which I love. But reading that in bed is just like, it's like juggling a big handful of spaghetti while I'm trying to read.
Last time I read Lord of the Rings, it was in my Alan Lee illustrated centenary edition, which is one book with all 3 in it, and it's like this, and it weighs more than my head.
I want that, by the way.
It's gorgeous, but it's rather inconvenient. I did actually smash myself in the nose with it once. I lost my Kindle in bed. And it's basically a book you can only read if you have a table. You know,
Yeah.
like you have to put
That's
it
how I felt
down.
about Sun Eater, because I checked out the hardcovers from my library for all of them, and I was like, I can't just like read this. I have like one of those iPad pillows that my friend gave me, and I was using that to read it because I was like, I just can't physically hold this for that long.
That's what I'm doing with that big. It's in the other room, but that Tolkien. It's the first 5 volumes of the History of Middle Earth, and it's heavy because it's actually they're listed as each volume is like an $80 book, so it's pretty high quality and very heavy. I can't hold that thing. I do the same thing. I got a pillow. I set it on the pillow and have it open, and it's
My baby hands can't hold
Yeah.
it.
Honestly, I think that's maybe a third of the reason I decided to not continue reading Shogun right now.
yeah.
Because
Big, yeah.
Too fat.
I mean, it's beautiful, the sexy fake leather, black and gold
Yeah.
and silver and red, and it's gorgeous. But yeah, you need a table.
Yeah.
Like you hold it up for 15 minutes, and my spindly little wrists, they just give out. I need to do wrist exercises and get myself some barbells or something.
I'll tell you,
big
when I
bone.
decided
Discord.
when I decided what to buy, which edition to read for Malazan, I went 100% with what is the easiest physical reading experience
hold.
aside from electronic. Yeah, and that's why I went with the trade paperbacks.
I wish I could get the
heavy.
trades.
I
The-
love
I
that.
can't
Trade
get the
paperbacks,
trades.
anything, yeah.
Yeah, the mass
Yeah.
market paperbacks are just uncomfortable when they're that big.
Yeah,
I like
once
the way
you- once you-
hardcovers look on shelves, but I way prefer to read a trade
Yeah.
paperback.
Facts. Facts.
I would.
Yeah.
I'm also totally irritated being a big Malazan fan. My Malazan shelf is Malazan Book of the Fallen, Ian C. Esselmont.
Oh,
You know,
Yeah.
because the
Oh, so
Esselmonts are all
annoying.
trades, and it's
Yeah.
super easy to get them. And the Malazan Book of the Fallen, I cannot get the trades. I don't know where to get them from. You know, over here anyway.
That's
Hey, I'll
Irritating.
share that spreadsheet with you too, because you can look on ISBN, because Abe Books is based in the UK, so that's where I found most.
Yeah,
of
but most of the stuff on Abe is in the US, and it's like the book costs $5 and the postage costs $5 too, or you know, which is okay if it's a cheap used book. But
I did
yeah.
find most of mine did ship from England though, so I don't know
Yeah,
why.
okay.
Maybe that was just coincidence. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a problem, and especially I hate to crease the spine. So if you get a thick mass market paperback, you're trying to, you know.
Oh yeah,
like
my
impossible to see.
Stormlight one.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah.
My-
Oh.
My Stormlight
I obviously
mass
don't care
markets,
about
I was
creasing.
like, I don't want to crease a trade paperback, but the mass markets, like my Stormlight ones, I was like,
Forget it. Yeah,
you know
just
what's worse?
break
though?
that
You know what's
thing.
worse than a fat paper or a fat mass market? The tall, skinny mass markets.
I hate that.
Is asking for these? Who wants those? No one.
Yeah, that drives me crazy because you get they're all the same level, and oh, we're gonna change the series now, and now they're an inch taller. Like who? Yeah, who signed
You
off?
guys
on
want to
that?
know something that's petty?
Totally.
I'm so like I'm not just frustrated. I'm deeply personally offended by the Dandelion Dynasty books and the incongruency. Like
The
There
last
is
one
no-
is like,
people are
There's-
looking
oh
at
my
me
god.
and they're like, "You should read those. They're really good. You'll like them." And I'm like, "No." You want to know why? Because that publisher just gave every reader in the world the middle
Literally.
finger, and
Literally.
they don't care. And I'm
Yeah.
like, who hires these people? When you think it would be people who love books that work at publishing agencies? No, they hate us. They hate readers, they hate authors, and they hate books. Because
Speaking
who
Bones
would
makes
do
me
that?
irrationally angry.
Who
Yeah,
would
but-
do
It
that?
makes me so mad.
And it's something
and
that
they
like,
did it on both as well, because I've got the UK covers, the greenish pastelly, which I think are really cool, but they also go 3, 4.
and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but like
And didn't they
literally
switch the
on
title
principle-
too?
On principle, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't want to read those because even if I read them digitally, I know that I'm just paying them for making me mad, and I don't want to do it. So I might
I
read
love-
them from the library someday.
Yeah, that's what you gotta
I'm
do. You gotta
sure-
get the library.
Sorry, Ken Liu. Sorry, I know it's not your fault. I will read them and I'll talk about them. But I'm not buying those books. I'm not doing
No,
it.
I feel you. I'm sure you saw Petrick's video about that. If you didn't, go watch
didn't,
it.
but
You know,
I will.
Yeah.
Petrick is like such a nice guy, and you can tell that he's getting angry.
Oh, good. I'm going to go watch it
He's
as soon
too
as
nice.
it's done.
He's too nice to get angry, but you see, just his
Yes.
voice started getting higher and higher. And
Feed my anger. Yes.
it was
It's
so great because he
unnecessary.
was like,
I've been
"Why
building
would
up.
you do
I've been building up to that as well. I like whenever I do a review, I always do a cover analysis because I'm a designer and I used to design books. And I so often I look at books and I'm just like, it would have been so easy to get that right. It would have been so
man,
easy.
I've got to go watch that video when we're done.
Like
because
the designer who sat there. I mean, normally I think it's not the designer. Usually the way the things like that happen is there's a change in art director. And the art director wants to put their stamp on something. So they decide, okay, we're doing this a bit differently because me.
Stupid.
And the designer is sitting there going, but maybe we shouldn't. And they have to. But yeah, Jay Christoph, I remember Mike's video. The spines are kind of fucked up on the Nevernight books. And Jay, the author, was also pissed off about it. You'd think that they would consult with the authors a little bit more, but they don't.
Well, in my mind, who is working at a publishing house? Who's in literally like who's doing that? Readers, right? Like if you dream and working in
you would
publishing,
think there would be people who love books.
And so you'd think that these people would be like, oh, that'll never fly. I wouldn't put those on my bookshelf. All the readers just like me out there who've grown up reading, love reading is their life. This is going to really annoy them because not every reader cares about book spines like we do. But I feel like enough people do. Like if you're going to buy these gorgeous hardcovers, because I'm sorry, but those books are stunning. If you're going to buy these gorgeous $30 hardcovers and arrange them in your house, that's just insulting. I'm sorry.
It's not just the hardcovers. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The trade paperbacks also, they did exactly the same thing. Like I've got the trade. And the first 3 trades are perfect. They all sit together. The spine art even kind of lines up and makes a bit of a collage-y looking image. And then the 4th one goes, it's like 1.5 inches, 2 inches taller.
So annoying.
Criminal.
I mean, even like a slight difference annoys me. Like I have the full Faithful and the Fallen, and Ruin is like a millimeter taller. It's like just a little bit taller, and it makes me so angry to look at.
Yeah,
but that's just your OCD.
Yes.
Well, and also like so, my Stormlight archives. I know this is like a common complaint, but it drives me crazy that the first 2 spines have horizontal lettering, and then the other 2 go for. Again, that's not a make or break thing. I bought them; they're on the shelf. It's just like a small. Like,
and I think in the reprints they did
but
them
the
all.
Ken Lu stuff is different.
And there's the thing that just constantly gets me with all this is there's no good reason for it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes there would be like certain books you can't print in a certain format thicker than mass market, like 1,500 is probably absolute max and so on. There are limitations. There are reasons that you can and can't do certain things, but there are other things where I'm just like, all you had to do was scale the typography just a little bit.
Right.
And it would have been fine.
I mean, someone with basic design skills, like if you can paint on Word, you should probably be able to make the spine match. I don't know. It just seems so intentional that it makes me want to just not give them my money. That's all it comes down to.
Yeah, it's the Stormlight one. See, I have 3 of them, which are vertical. And then just the one, I only have 1 of them going this way. My
Way of Kings and Word of Radiance are both. Yeah,
see, my Way of Kings goes up and down, but it drives me crazy because I've even tweeted at Tor a couple times saying, "Hey, can I order just the dust jacket, or how can I order this exact one so my collections match?" And they don't reply. They don't care.
This is why I bought all of the Realm of the Elderlings at once.
At once, yep.
And it's like the pride of my bookshelf. I look up there and I'm like, 16 books that are designed, the spines, the way the spines look, they go together. They're all the same height.
Yep. I got to get those. When you did that video opening that box of your sword, I was like, man, I gotta like and subscribe for sure. No, I was kidding. I was already subscribed. But I have to get those, which is so
actually, you know what? After doing that video, wait a sec.
Oh, he's showing the robe.
Where's he gonna get the sword?
Get the sword. Lay it across your lap like you're a king.
After doing that video, I decided that opening a box with a sword is actually really, really inconvenient. So I bought myself a dagger.
Yes,
nice. Incredible.
You definitely needed a dagger. You definitely.
I tell my husband regularly how much I want a sword, and he's yet to get me one. And I'm like, my birthday's coming up. So
we're gonna put
When's
ourselves
your-
on the boards.
If you send me your address and the date of your birthday, I bet I can organize something.
Oh, incredible.
Yeah, I've had one picked out from Valerian Steel for years, and I know exactly where I'm going to put it.
Which one?
Mhm.
Which
What?
one? Which one?
What? Oathkeeper, of course.
What do you mean? Of course.
Well, you need to get to know me better.
My first choice would have been Longclaw, but yeah.
I know, but I am not Stark, so I mean that's not the house I identify with. You know what I mean? What was I gonna say? Oh no, I've got to get those paperbacks because I have all of the Realm of the Elderlings in hardcover, which I'm not going to get rid of those. Like that's the problem, is I don't have space for them. I really can't justify the cost, and I don't need them because I already own each book physically. But I really, really want that Realm of the
so
Elderlings.
great. You know, but all of
They're
this,
so good.
all of this just creates an aftermarket for like Juniper Books, like the dust jackets that you can buy and some other companies. Because I
I
know I
have
have that for the Wheel of Time, and because those Wheel of Time covers were the absolute worst. I mean, covers
Yeah.
themselves, but then the spines were just, I mean, it just looked horrible on the shelf. And now it looks like one of the best things on my bookshelf. And I know they've
Yeah, I have
done
a few
that.
of their sets. They're nice.
Yeah, they have. I bought one from them for my Harry Potter books because those are another ones, great covers, but the spines are just dull and
All over
boring.
the place. Yeah.
So there's an aftermarket, I guess, for that. But like, come on, publishers, it's really not that hard.
I have
And
the
I
box
think-
set of Harry Potter that has like the blue one that has like Hogwarts on the spine. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I had the Hedwig set, and then
Oh, that's nice.
yeah, and it looks great. But I ended up selling it to someone who was looking for it because I also have the Nerdy Ink set. And just with my personal aesthetic, the Nerdy Ink set just was a little more what I was looking for because the Hedwig one is so pretty, but it's very classy and like that's just not my vibe. So I ended up being able to sell those and justify having 2 dust jacket sets for one cover
Okay.
books. But then I also have the Wheel of Time ones are pretty nice, and
Yeah.
they are kind of expensive, but I'm like, have you ever bought prints of digital art? Like these come down to about $10 a book. And it's basically buying someone's digital art, and they come so nicely packaged. They very high quality paper stock. Like they're really nicely made. So I understand the cost, and it's more of like a home decor, like conversation piece than it is just like buying new dust jackets. So
Sure.
I want to get some more from them and from because other companies are starting to do it too. So I do want to get some more because it's a fun way to kind of spruce up your books. And then you can buy cheap, like hardcovers, like mismatched, and put them all together because you know that you're going to have a really crisp, fresh looking set of dust jackets to go on in the end. So I'm going to keep looking for other completed book sets I have that have those available because I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah,
I totally agree with Mike. His next comment. For a long time, Longclaw was the sword I would have gotten, but now that since House of the Dragon is around, I would have to decide between Dark Sister and Blackfire. I think Blackfire is such an
Blackfire is
awesome
fucking cool. Yeah.
sword design. It looks so cool, but it's also a really heavy, chunky sword.
You guys are modern. I'm kind of old school with the sword that I want. I want to get the Conan the Barbarian sword from the first Arnold movie. That's the one I want.
I want
Did you-
Nightblood from the Cosmere.
Yeah.
Did you
yeah.
know
Always
know
will.
that in Stranger Things 4, season 4, the sword, I don't know if you've watched it, but the sword that he uses is the actual prop from the Conan movie.
I knew it
Wow.
looks
Not
like
a
it.
replica.
No, wow.
That's
It's not a
awesome.
replica. Whoever owned it, I think maybe one of the producers or something of the show actually bought the original prop
Yeah.
and then said, "Hey, we could use this."
Yeah. Very, very
Hardback
cool.
Realm of the Elderlings in the UK.
I have a lot of the hardcovers I've gotten used. I don't think they're the UK ones, but they look really nice on the shelf. Like the Fits in the Fool trilogy, they look really good. They're huge,
Yeah.
but they look really nice.
Mike, I'll have to let you know about discount codes and stuff because I
Yeah.
think I ended up paying like $160 for mine, like altogether. It came out to about $10 a book.
Yeah.
$250 for some dust jackets is pretty.
No,
Yeah.
I did have a discount code, but it was like only like 15%. But yeah, because it came out to about $10 a book, and that included the shipping. And so I was like, I feel like that's pretty reasonable. It is a lot of money. Like I'm not trying to downplay it. Like $160 isn't a lot, but at the time I was just like, I think I can justify this, and I've never regretted it because they look cool. So
Yeah, mine was the same. I think it was 40% off when I bought it, so it was
40. Okay.
Yeah, it was probably about the same price there.
Mhm.
But
And those
Mike-
people at Theater for Books are cool. Like you can
Mike,
reach out on
you and I-
Instagram or email them, and they communicate really well and stuff.
Mike and I, in some ways, seem to be the same person because the sword replica I've been wanting forever is under you. But yeah, I haven't put swords in my prop buying priorities because I have my own sword.
Yeah, I just have to at some point because I've wanted it since. I mean, I was a show fan before I was a book fan. I read all the books in between seasons 6 and 7, or between 5 and 6. I can't remember. But either way, I've wanted a Game of Thrones sword for so long. And at some point, I'm just going to have to prioritize it and be like, it's just money. Like, that's the thing about money is I always like sit there and go, oh my gosh. But like you spend it, then you get more. Like life goes on. So I needed to just buy myself a sword.
And depending on where you get your replicas from, I mean, you need to be careful that they're not garbage replicas. If you buy United Cutlery, who are the guys who actually made the swords for the Lord of the Rings movie, and I think they also made the actual swords used in the Game of Thrones series, theirs are expensive, but you know that they're good.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also get a lot of replica swords made just by blacksmiths that cost a lot less than United Cutlery. So,
Well, I have to make friends with the blacksmith. I know one guy that's a blacksmith. His name's Lockie, but he lives like in somewhere far away, Norway. I don't know. I don't know any of the blacksmiths. Do you know a lot of blacksmiths? No,
I used to.
genuine question.
No.
Genuine question.
I used to actually, I actually apprenticed with a blacksmith for a while, a long time ago.
I looked into taking a blacksmithing class, but it was far from me and expensive, so I didn't do
No,
it.
no. No, this ended up working out the way it did, but mostly because I knew the guy already.
Yeah.
And we were kind of friends, and I was like, that looks fun. And he's like, I need a helper. So,
That's awesome.
I
That's
did that
really
for
cool.
a year or two.
Yeah, there's like a women-led blacksmithing place in Brooklyn, but it's like just
Cool.
too far for me. And I
Right.
was like, I don't know.
I mean, like I would love. I'm the type of person that I would love to be like, oh my gosh, so I'm going to Brooklyn. I'm going to be there for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But then I'd come back and I'd be like, well, I don't have a forge, so I guess
Yeah,
I'm going to move
I
on
mean,
to my next.
I don't
hobby.
live that far. I'm only like an hour from Brooklyn, but I was still
Oh.
like, I have to drive
not too
through
far.
I would have to drive through Manhattan. Like, I don't know. It's a lot.
Where I live.
Getting anywhere in Berlin takes an hour,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live in
pretty much no
Century.
matter where you're going.
And so if I want to go to Starbucks, it's a 57-mile drive. So
Oh my
I'm like,
God.
an hour to Brooklyn. No, literally 57 miles exactly. So
wow.
Just driving through Manhattan sucks. I don't want to do that.
No, I don't think
I'm not American and not living in America, so I don't even own a car.
That's fair.
Because owning a car here would be an absolute pain in the ass. It would not be worth it. Which means I'm stuck on public transport. We have a really good network of subway and everything, but there are places I could go in Berlin that would literally take an hour and 3/4 to get there one way. Just
Wow.
because Berlin is Berlin. Yeah, it's a huge city and everything's far apart.
The beauty of that, though, is public transportation. You can read, you can listen to
Yeah.
music, do work. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be sitting there driving like the rest of us. So I did love that I've been to Berlin once, but I did love that about every place I've been in Europe generally. It's just all that
Yeah.
public transportation.
Yeah, that's where I started, or why I started recently listening to audiobooks. Because my commute to work is 45 minutes in a train, and I have to change trains, and in the morning the train's full, so you can't really sit down comfortably. So I just listen. Right now I'm listening to Priest of Lies. Peter McLean.
okay.
Priest,
I have
Priest
that
of
on,
Bones
on my
is
shelf.
first
I haven't
one.
read it.
I did a review of it where I basically said this, and I hope Peter McLean wasn't insulted, but I'm pretty sure he wasn't, because I've seen him use gifts of this show to make jokes about his own books. It's basically Peaky Blinders if Peaky Blinders happen in a fantasy world. So there are no pistols, there are swords and knives, and there's some magic, and there are guns, but they're very primitive. I mean, like, 15th century, 14th century, 15th century kind of beginnings of gunpowder guns. But it's very much the story of Peaky Blinders. A mob boss goes off to war, comes back with a bunch of unemployed soldiers, and someone's taken all of his stuff. And he starts by taking all of his stuff back, and then he gets involved in politics because he wants more power and influence. And going by the name of the fourth book, it sounds like he ends up being maybe king. And it's good. It's not going to change your life, but it's a really good read, and it's a lot of fun and very cool characters.
You said Peter McLean was the name?
Peter McLean, yeah. Peter McLean.
I have that on my shelves.
First book is called Priest of Bones, and he is a priest. He becomes a priest in the army because their priest gets killed. And that's the second book. Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
yeah. That's the one I'm listening to right now. Yep. It's very good. It's a lot of fun. Patrick also reviewed all of them, and he loved them. His opinion counts a lot more than mine. Yeah, no, they're very, very good.
Yeah, I'd honestly never heard of those.
Yeah, no, they're like, they're not very thick. They're reasonably quick reads.
It felt like 300 pages or so in my hand.
I mean, it's the whole series is the size of the Bone Hunters, basically.
And that's so refreshing sometimes.
Yeah,
we're used to such chunkers to be able to pick up a 300-page story.
It
feels like a breeze.
And I can really recommend the audiobooks. They're narrated by John Lee, and his voice perfectly suits the characters and the world and the atmosphere. I talked to Peter McLean, and after I started the audiobook of the first one, I said, I like having books on my shelf, and I would like to maybe physically read. And he put me in touch with his publisher. They sent me all the books. And then I started reading one of them. And I was like,
where's John Lee?
Can I get the audiobook? Not from the publisher. I went and got an Audible credit and got my Audible of it. But yeah, they're really good. They're a lot of fun. They're very crimey. They're pretty violent. And they're not heisty crimey like Locke. They're more mob crimey.
Have you read the Greenbone Saga?
Not yet. No, I've got the first one on my shelf, and it's in my video coming out this week, I think, which is series that I haven't started or finished. That I want to.
If you like a mob kind of story,
yeah,
yeah. I'm really realizing, because I was going through that list, and I was like, oh, this is another crimey kind of story.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is also another crimey kind of story. Yeah, I like those.
I like it too.
Heisty and crimey and mobby and all of that. Yeah.
I mean, some of my favorite series are Loch Lamora and Greenbones, so I love that kind of stuff.
I haven't read Loch Lamora yet, and I'm reading it this year. And actually have a library hold on it, and I'll probably be reading it in the next couple months, actually.
They're so good.
Yeah, it's one of the few remaining things that I feel like everyone has read except me. Like, for a long time, there was only those, and now I'm just like, I think there's only a few left. That people are like, what do you mean you haven't read that yet? And I'm like, I haven't read it yet. So
yeah,
there's so many books. I mean,
there's so many books.
I was
Gentleman Bastards is very good.
Yeah, I was talking with Jimmy last week before on his channel, and the one that kept coming up that I hadn't read is Name of the Wind. I just haven't got to it yet. I want to read it.
I have an unpopular opinion about it.
It's not unpopular in this chat because Mike's here. Mike has a pretty unpopular opinion about it too.
I cannot stand Name of the Wind. I did not like that book at all.
Yeah. Well, that's one of those I haven't read yet.
Sorry, Name of the Wind fans. But also Patrick Rothfuss just sucks as a person.
And you know what, Jordan? I didn't read it. I read it in November, and
Thank you,
I read it in September. And the pretty much only reason I put it off for so long is like, again, it's not that Patrick Rothfuss hasn't written another book in 10 years. Like, that's not why. It's because I don't like him. Like, he annoys the crap out of me, and he mistreats his fandom, and I don't like him. And so I
like Scott Lynch hasn't put out a book, but he was like, guys, I'm having mental health problems. But then like Patrick Rothfuss is like, well, screw you guys. Like,
he's a dick to everybody, and that's why I really was like, I just didn't want to like be a part of it, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I already owned the first two books, the only two books, and I got them used. So I'm like, Patrick Rothfuss didn't see any of this money. So I liked the first one, but the second one, to me, I liked it even better, and it made the first one I liked the first one better after I read the second one. So I did enjoy them, and it kind of surprised me that I did so much a little bit, but I did enjoy them quite a bit. But I think it's like giving myself a lot of space between the hype and then actually reading them. And I went into it with like no expectations. I was like, everyone likes this. It doesn't mean I will. I'm annoyed at Patrick Rothfuss, but maybe I can still like this book. And I was pretty mixed on it until it's just a book I haven't stopped thinking about. And the second book kind of sealed the deal for me. So I liked it, but I understand when people don't, for sure.
Yeah, Philip.
I'll never like go down on the ship defending it because because Patrick Rothfuss is a kind of a dick. So like
I just didn't like the main character, and since it's like told from his point of view, it's like if you don't like him, you're not gonna like the book. So
that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the
really
deal
wants
with all first person POV books.
Yeah, Philip really wants me to read it because there's an aspect of music in it that he wanted to find out what I thought about that. So I'm curious for that. But
I liked it.
It's interesting because there's in a way you could call those books How I Learned to Be a Dick. because like the first person framing narrative, like the now, he's a dick.
Yes.
The main character is just completely a dick. He's arrogant, he's full of himself, he thinks he's god of the world, whatever. But then in the stories he's telling, he's less so.
Yes.
Because he's younger and he hasn't quoth with like a name that is intentionally unpronounceable.
Yeah, that's pretentious as fuck. I'm sorry.
It is.
Why did you name him this?
Because that's actually one of the things that kind of annoyed me throughout the book is
so
like Patrick Rothfuss's writing, like his style, his prose style is actually quite beautiful. Like there's a lot of really delicious writing in there. But then sometimes you can also feel that he's winking at you and he's being a bit of an arrogant dick.
Yes.
You know, that he's overwriting it because he's pretentious, you know? And
like the plot itself just was boring to me. Like there was no point in time when I was reading it where I was like, I gotta keep going. Like the whole time I was like, I forced myself to finish. And I was like, I shouldn't have. I should have just DNF'd.
Yeah.
I was reading it because the prose is nice.
And this obviously doesn't apply to everybody, but in my experience, so I am almost audiobook exclusive. Like I do a lot of companion reading or immersive reading or whatever you want to call it. And I do eyeball only reading as well. But I would say 85% of the time, unapologetic, I am audio only. And here's my theory on this. So a good narration cannot save a bad book. And a bad narration, in my case, doesn't ever ruin an excellent book. Like, for example, I loved the book.
Totally could.
I loved the book Cujo. Like, I liked Cujo by Stephen King. I really liked it. The narration was like horrible, but I was still able to love the story because I really liked the book. So that being said, I don't think a really, really good narration can save a bad book. And I don't think a bad narration can actually ruin a really good book. But there's so much room in the middle. And I think an amazing performance, an amazing narration can make up the difference in a book that probably would have been just okay for me. And so there are so many times though, I'm like, I don't know if the book was medium and the narration was great, or the book was great and the narration was medium. Like sometimes I feel like that can affect my end result on how I feel about things. And when it comes to Patrick Rothfuss, I think beautiful prose does so well on audio because it's just seamless. It's perfect. It flows. It feels good in your head. Like, so I think a good narration with beautiful prose can kind of make up for a little bit lacking in plot for me. But again, that's my unique experience because like, so again, I wonder how differently I would have felt if I read it eyes only versus, listening to it almost, I probably cracked that actual book open 2 times the whole time I was reading it. So sometimes I wonder if really good prose with a really good delivery can kind of make up the difference.
I find that with audiobooks, I listen to audiobooks at work because I don't have to like talk to humans while I'm working. Right. So I listen to audiobooks at work and I listen to them pretty fast. So I read audiobooks much faster than like physical books. And so I find that since I listen to them at a fast speed and I listen to them for hours at a time, like if the pacing is bad in a book, I don't notice it as much when I'm listening to it as if I were like, if I'm just reading a physical book and the pacing is bad, I get bored much quicker because I can more easily get distracted. But when I'm listening to an audiobook, pacing is not as big of a deal for me because I'm listening to it so quick that like I move past the bad pacing quickly.
Right. And it's not that it's quick because you probably agree that like my eyes can take in words faster than I can
exactly.
listen. But when you're listening at work, that's an 8-hour solid block of listening. And so that's why a lot of non-audiobookers are like, you guys just listen so fast. And I'm like, it's not the speed. Yeah. It's the amount of time because nobody reads a book for 8 hours solid.
No
5 days a week. But do you do it
not
every
5
day?
days a week. No.
Do you do it every day? So I don't work right now, but I had a job for about a year that same as Jordan, I get to go to work. I clocked in and I did my job for 8 hours. Yep. And nobody interrupted me. And I listened to audiobooks every day, all day. That's the only reason I probably read 100 books last year is because for the majority of it, for 9 months out of last year, I was working in a job that I probably did 5 to 7 hours a day in audio. Yeah, like that is so much more time than the average person gets to have. So it's not that we speed it up so fast. Like if you guys heard the speed at which we listen, it doesn't sound very fast, but it's that we do it so much more frequently. Like we have
I almost wish I had a job like that.
It's great.
My job is basically constantly thinking.
Yeah.
And if I'm constantly focused and thinking about something, I can't then also have someone talking to me.
For me, my job is all math. I'm an engineer, so like my job is all math. So I can do math and listen to a book at the same time. But as soon as I have to like write an email or something, I have to pause the audiobook.
Totally. So but it's good that Mike is not alone in his hot takes with Name of the Wind, because in the comments too, like I think it's divisive. Like he thinks he's alone on this island, but I do think it's divisive, and that's why I was surprised when it was done. That I was like, I like that.
It's one of those series like anything written by Sando or Wheel of Time and Name of the Wind or Kingkiller. Like if I was to make a video that honestly told people what I think of Wheel of Time, my channel would burst into flames.
Mine did.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I wouldn't do it, and I've never done anything about Kingkiller. I actually like Kingkiller. Like I bought the nice anniversary editions of it. I'm very nervous about where he's going with it because, like you said, there's kind of not really that much of a plot. Mm-hmm. And 2 books of not that much of a plot. What do you continue?
It's more just like an interesting life story.
Yeah. It's a slice of life of a very weird guy.
Yeah, I'd be fine with it, except for the present day stuff does have a plot, and I'm just like, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a trilogy, how much more we can get out of that. So I'm very curious about where it's going to go.
Which is why I think. I mean, it feels a little bit sometimes like a writing exercise. Like he was writing a whole bunch of really nice prose, but he didn't necessarily have a super well constructed story in mind. And I have a hard time imagining where that's going to end. But I like it, and it would be a good way to get views. But I think the reason it's a hot take is that there is such a rabid fandom. Mm-hmm. There is a Kingkiller fandom. No.
I'm just like they totally exist. Where I really liked it, and I'm glad I read it, and I'll read the next one if it comes out. But I'm definitely not rabid. Like I'm not going to be like trying to change anyone's mind because the people who have different opinions, I'm just like, no, I can see that. Like I can totally see that. Like sometimes people have opinions that I'm like, did we even read the same book? Yeah. But with that one, I'm just like, no, I can see that for sure.
Yeah,
I can see that for sure.
Every time I hear anyone talk about Wheel of Time, I'm always like,
Me too.
Maybe I got a faulty edition, or
That's how me, Alex, and Kyle have been reading Faithful and the Fallen together, and we've been enjoying it. But like, so many people are like, "This is the best series I've ever read," and all three of us have been like, "Do we have different books? Like, are we reading this?"
I've only read
to
Malice.
remember.
I've only read the first one, and to me it was like, okay, it's a debut novel.
Yeah,
and
it was good.
It was an interesting story. It's not that well written.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it improving. I hear it
Right.
improves, and I haven't continued, so I'm not sure.
With John Gwynne, for me, like, first of all, I think he's an author that with each of his series, he gets noticeably better at writing.
Yeah.
And when I read Faithful and the Fallen, I was pretty new to reading fantasy as well. So I felt like it was like a perfect entry point. Now, I would not recommend it to somebody as a number one entry point because there are a lot of POVs, like the geography is big. There's a lot to remember. But I feel like it's a good, like, okay, so you read this and you liked it. You tried, you read Mistborn, you read maybe something kind of bordering on YA. You really liked fantasy, but you want to read something now that has multiple POVs and like a large cast. I feel like it's pretty good entry level fantasy. I think it's good entry level fantasy, and I really liked it. But I read this in 2019 when I was coming back to fantasy, and I was talking to somebody the other day, and I wondered if I were to reread it now, I wonder if it would be as impactful as it was then, because I've read so much more since then. Like, I think it's always gonna be enjoyable for me. I like that setting, and I like those tropes, and I like the way he threw in some of his own stuff that I'd never seen before. But I do wonder sometimes if I were to read it again for the first time now, not reread it, but read it for the first time now, after I've reading so much other stuff, I wonder if it would hit quite the same way. I do.
I also think reading Bloodsworn, I think reading Bloodsworn Saga really, I read that first and it's much better. So I think that kind of influence, I was like, man, and I knew that it was like his first series, but I was like, man, he's gotten so much better. Like, Bloodsworn is so much better than Faithful and the Fallen, in my opinion.
I'm almost certain if I had read back to Wheel of Time, if I had read Wheel of Time when I was 16,
I think I would have loved it.
I would have loved it. I mean, back then I loved Sword of Shannara, and I loved the Belgariad and all of these things, which are okay, but they're not amazing. They're very Tolkien ripoff kind of. Okay, we're all doing Tolkien again kind of stuff, and.
Sure. Yeah, I like Eden's Fantasy, and it was
like that.
A comfort read for me, for sure. Yeah. But when I read Wheel of Time, it was almost my first series back. So I took a massive 10-year break from reading, and I read A Song of Ice and Fire, just kind of sprinkled out here and there. But I pretty much focused all of my attention on A Song of Ice and Fire. I was like, I'm going to be the one girl who just reads this one series over and over again. And then I read The First Law, and I really liked it. But again, I'm talking about over the course of the year, I read 10 books. And then towards the very end of that year, I binged read them all in a row. And it was my first, I'm going to be a reader. I was like, I'm going to buy these books and I'm going to get back into reading. And my sister had just moved out. She lived with us for 2.5 years. And I was lonely. I was so depressed. I felt like I was just completely isolated, and I needed something to throw myself at, completely just immerse in a new world with a whole group of friends. And I read the whole series in 12 weeks, and not because I was like, oh, I'm so fast reader. I just didn't do anything else, because I was like, if I leave this bubble, I feel like I'm going to head towards a deep, dark depression. And so that book to me, that series, it's a one that I don't know if I read it again for the first time right now, I'm not sure how I'd feel about it, but I will love it forever, because those people took me in and saved me when I needed it. And so I cannot help but think back at that series with nothing but warm memories and comfort, because I used it for that and it worked. So do I love it? Absolutely. But it's another one that, do I understand though when people hate it? I do, because it's frustrating, and it has a lot of stuff that doesn't need to be there, and it has a lot of potential that it didn't capture, I think.
Yeah.
But I love it. I'll always love it. So
I love having those books that maybe wouldn't work for you now, but like because you read it at a very specific time in your life, it just
It's special.
Yeah. Like a lot of the books I read during like the height of lockdown, I was like unemployed for 6 months during lockdown and stuff. And I read so much that year. And so many of those books I probably wouldn't like as much if I read them now. But because I read them during that time when I was like just alone with my husband in a tiny apartment, it was like they're still some of my favorite books just because the experience of reading them was great.
Yeah. Also, I think Faithful and the Fallen was the first read along I ever did. So again, like super fond memories of, I had never heard about it. There wasn't even like a wiki page for it yet. Like we were all just like, what is this? Like Mike, I feel, and I know other people had read it, but I feel like Mike just like pulled this guy out of nowhere and was just like, John Gwynn, we should all read this. And it was the first read along, like formal read along I ever took part of. And it was just so fun to experience that like with people. So yeah, those kinds of things will always be super special to me. But yeah, I get it when people just don't click with it the same way I did, because so much of like circumstances goes into how you feel about a book. Like I have other great books that I've read that I'm like, I didn't get it. But I'm like, but also look back at what you were doing during that month. Like maybe it was a bad time to read that book because now you subconsciously associate that terrible week or whatever with that book.
Yeah, no, it's so wrapped up, not necessarily nostalgia, but where you were in your life, what was going on. And it's very interesting to me because like Matt, you mentioned a lot of those old books that I read in the 80s that we all did, that we loved. The Belgariad. I still love the Belgariad. Is it formulaic? Yes. In fact, David Eddings published his formula that he used for all of his, which is basically he has 10 tropes that he somehow weaves together, and he tells the same story with like every single series he ever wrote. But I still loved it in the Belgariad. I still love some of those characters, and part of it is, you know, you read it when you're 14 and you have some nostalgia factor in there. But yeah, a lot of times though, it's tough when you go back and you reread. Like I reread the Belgariad and I thought it held up, but then I reread the second series of his, The Malloreon, and just shook my head the whole time because it was the same story, not told quite as well. And it just felt like, oh, he's just cashing in on this same formula. But
even when I was in my teens, I started reading The Malloreon and I was like,
same story again.
I think I've read this.
Yeah. That's how I felt. I remember when Dan Brown was real big with like, Da Vinci Code and all of that. Like I read.
I was a big Dan Brown fan.
Oh yeah, I read Angels and Demons, loved it. Read Da Vinci Code, loved it. Read the third one, was like, okay, you just gave me the same story 3 times in a row.
This is what you do, and you've done it again.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the problem with those books that are very much so just like idea driven. Like we have this like plot and it worked really, really well. It could usually work well one more time, but then it gets a little like, okay, we're doing this again.
Well, and this probably explains some of my love for the Malazan Book of the Fallen. What Madison described with like not being in a very good place. In 2020, I lost my job and my girlfriend within a couple of months, and we were in lockdown, so I couldn't go out with friends. And I read the Malazan Book of the Fallen in 3 or 4 months, all of it.
That's impressive.
And wow. I just wasn't doing anything else. I was unemployed. I was kind of depressed. I couldn't go out. I couldn't see friends. There just wasn't anything else to do. So like every week I had said, okay, I've got half a day where I'm going to send out a bunch of resumes and deal with job finding stuff. And otherwise I'm just reading. And I just read Malazan Book of the Fallen. And I mean, it sounds dramatic, but I could almost say that Malazan Book of the Fallen saved my life that year.
No, I understand. Like it sounds dramatic, but I look back and I'm just like, that book series. I mean, again, I don't think it necessarily saved my life, but like it protected me and like held me close and like gave me something to look forward to each day. And like when you are in the depths of something that feels really dark, having something to look forward to is everything. And just having that escape of knowing that like there's things in life I have to do, but there's one thing in life I get to do. So like it made the day-to-day a lot easier. And like
there's a whole bunch of stuff over here I would rather not think about right now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to think about these things because they're fun.
We all read for
Yeah.
escapism. We all. That's
Yeah, sure.
why we
And
read.
that is totally a good thing. It's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that at all.
There are more destructive hobbies to escape
reading
with,
is the best mental
Yeah.
health treatment I know of anyway.
Mhm.
I was
And that's why it is tough.
I was reminded of that. I just finished a couple of nights ago Stoner by John Williams, which I loved. It's fantastic. But there's one aspect of the story in the middle where I wasn't liking it because it was just too much mainstream real world life that
It's too normal.
like, yeah. And it's just one of those, I don't know. I have a tendency in books that are, I guess, realism, that when characters do things stupid, instead of me feeling empathy for them, I don't feel empathy at all for them. I just think they're stupid. Whereas in a fantasy world, you know, Fitz does something stupid and I feel bad for him. So I don't know why, but something with like mainstream fiction that's about real life and real relationships and things like that, I have pretty much zero appeal of reading that.
Yeah, me too.
So
Josh, I think that's such a good point because I don't want to get stuck in my genre because I know there's some amazing books that I will really, really love out there that are, like you said, mainstream fiction, literary fiction, whatever you want to call it. And I'm open to reading them, but I want to be extremely choosy about the ones I read because I still have to escape. And so if it's too realistic, if it reminds me too much of my day-to-day going on, like it's just not going, it might be a great book, but it's not, I read for escapism. And so the books that I read that are not fantasy or genre specific, like science fiction or something, I need them to come highly recommended. And I need to make sure that the people recommending them understand what I'm looking for in a book because I love to read, but I want to read, I don't want to waste any time or any, energy on pages that are just going to make me feel like I'm still here. Like I want to go somewhere else. And a good book can do that to you, even if it is taking place in modern day America. It can still make you feel that way, but it has to be the right book.
Yeah, it reminded me of at one point, I read a Jonathan Franzen book. It's probably 10, 15 years from now. And every character was just so tragic. And it was just, I couldn't stand that thing. And it was one of the biggest books of the year that it came out and everything. And I just realized at that point, well, I don't like modern literature.
Which one was it?
I don't even remember the name of it. I blocked that out of my memory, but
because I read some of his stuff years ago and had a similar feeling.
Yeah, it was.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, it's just really tough because I don't necessarily think I always read for escapism because I do like a lot of literary fiction, but I guess certain kinds of it and a lot of kinds of the more mainstream type of modern day fiction just doesn't really appeal to me at all.
Yeah.
And it's
the one I found that seems to be a perfect fit every time, and I yet to read something from him that didn't just absolutely blow me away, is Frederick Backman. I can't stop.
Okay, let me tell you about my Backman experience.
I haven't read them all, but I've read almost all of them, and I'll tell you what I like about it after you tell me what.
Josh has got Backman hot takes, I think.
Yeah, I guarantee I do because I know I'm in the minority here. But I was reading Anxious People, and something happened halfway through the book that I literally just said, "This is ridiculous. I hate this book," and I closed it and I DNF'd. That's part one. It was so ridiculous. I just said, this is stupid. Why am I reading this? So I closed the book, hated it. So then I went to read Beartown because Beartown is a highly touted book. And I DNF'd that one. Now I DNF'd that one because if you've read it, there's a scene in the middle of the book that was about to unfold that I just simply was not going to read because I knew what was going to happen after that scene in this town. And I just said, I have zero desire to read this. So
that is definitely a book that should come with a lot of trigger warnings. It's very hard to read.
I DNF'd that one. And I had a friend that to this day still texts me. He was like, I really think you should finish Beartown. And I won't do it.
Yeah, that's a personal preference thing that I really understand.
But I'm done with. I'm two DNFs by one author. Yeah, so. Now tell us why I'm wrong.
I respect that take because especially both of I think I know exactly what you're talking about in Anxious People too. And that's not where I would recommend people start with Backman. But again, I mean, if you don't like it, you don't like it. Like there's nothing wrong with just having a different take. But to me, it's so funny because these two authors, like the tone and the type of story they tell couldn't be more different. So please don't take this as me comparing one to the other. But Bachman can do what I have seen no one else be able to do for me other than Stephen King. And that is to take a town and a setting and make it feel like a character in the book. But also the way he writes dialogue and the way that people interact with each other in his books are so believable and realistic on a scale that I've only seen done by Stephen King. So again, are they alike? Do they write similar stories? Is their writing style similar? I think in structure, their style is similar, but not in delivery, if that makes sense at all. But he's made me feel things for people that only Stephen King has ever been able to do as well. But again, I always recommend starting with A Man Called Uva. But
I've only read Anxious People and A Man Called Uva, and I liked both. I finished A Man Called Uva when I was listening to it in the car, and I had pulled up to a Walgreens, and I had like 10 minutes left, so I was sitting in the parking lot listening to it, and I was just like bawling. If anyone walked by my car, they would have been like, she needs help.
They'd be like, she just found out her grandma died. Or
Yeah, I was like a mess, like in this Walgreens parking lot listening to it.
Yeah. So again, I think that they are special, and there's something about, he does that Stephen King thing too, where at the beginning of it, he'll say something about a person similar to a Stephen King, like, and that was the last time they ever saw each other. And so you're like, wait, what? And then chapters later, you're like, there it is. And there it is. So I think I love the way he writes people. I love the way he writes dialogue. And I love the way he creates this community that feels alive and real by the end of it. So I just think he's really, really special. And Beartown is a tough read, but I think it as a whole is really worth it. But I don't push it on people because there is really sensitive, like, and I'm not a fan of the word triggering just on principle, but it has some very triggering content in it. I will agree with that.
I mean, I do agree with the community aspect. I did see that in Beartown. And I was mostly enjoying Beartown until I saw what it was really going to be about at that kind of midpoint. That's when I tapped out. But I
will say that's not what that is a catalyst for a lot of things.
Know. Yeah.
But it is.
But I also know that theme, I saw that, and it's kind of personal because I saw that play out in my hometown where a situation like that happened, and I saw what happened with the community firsthand. And I just said, I don't want to read that. I lived that.
That is so fair.
Yeah,
I get that.
So,
man.
Yeah, I just had to tap out. I wish I had started with A Man Called Uva because it seems like everybody loves that one, but I don't think I'll read it because
that's okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's burned me twice, so
again, he will make, and again, another thing similar to Stephen King is he will make you uncomfortable. And again, a different version. Instead of being, scary, creepy, like I don't like this. It's uncomfortable, but it's because I think it's important. Like these are things that like it's important for people to realize that this is how it works. Like these situations that are making you uncomfortable, it's because it's real. Like you said, Josh, like you've experienced something like this. So for you understand this on a literal level. Like you've lived it. But for so many people out there that they don't want to believe that that's actually happening. And I think it's important for people to go stop, like get out of your comfort zone and realize that people are going through shit that you don't know anything about. And it's so important to like get off your bubble sometimes and be uncomfortable so you can be aware of what's going on around you. So it sounds like you already have that level of awareness in your life. And for me, I thought it was a great reminder. I was sitting there like, damn. Like, don't pretend like this isn't real because this is going on all the time. And so I thought it was really impactful for me.
Well, I know I'm in the minority. I know a lot of people love him as an author. It's just based on.
And then he has some shorter stuff that's just a nice way to, change tone, read something and go, gosh, that was nice. And then, go back to your dark fantasy where all the moms are dead and the uncles killed the fathers, and go back to your dark grim fantasy. But sometimes it's nice to read something that is still it is dark, it is heavy, but it's a different completely tone, and it's coming from another angle.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
A while ago, Mike addressed a comment to me, and I'm not actually sure exactly why, but he said, "Matt, I'm loving Drizzt." So there's still room for books like those. Were we talking about books like those? Or I guess
We were talking about formulaic books.
Classic fantasy.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Right,
sword and
the
sorcery.
old stuff. Mike, actually, if you're still around, your enthusiasm for Drizzt has actually made me start wanting to read those.
I started it. I liked the first one a lot.
I've jammed myself up with promises of what, like, reading really thick books all year long.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to get to. I mean, I think actually next year I'm going to need some light reads, because this year I'm doing a read along with Philip next month. Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe, which is the most complicated sci-fi or fantasy I've ever read. Not complicated. The story is actually not that complicated, but there are so many references going on, or things under the surface going on, that you need to figure out. I actually bought another book, which is a chapter guide to that book.
So when you start reading it or finish it, go on Scott's channel, the Bald Booktuber. He did a breakdown of Book of the New Sun with Christopher Rocchio.
Yeah, so, no, I know. I mean, I've actually,
because that's Christopher Rocchio's favorite book.
This is my third read. This is my third read, right? Wow. So the first time I think I got 60% of it, and I think maybe the second time I probably could say I tackled about 75% of it. So I'm hoping now that I'm reading it with a professor of literature, that, and I have a chapter guide, I might come out with 90% after the third read.
Check out that video too, because I didn't watch it, of course, because I haven't read Book of the New Sun, but apparently they went like, even Scott afterwards was like, I just stopped talking and just started listeing, because he was melting his brain.
I saw that video come up and I was like, I'm about to reread it. I'll watch it after that. Yeah. Mike also says he should too stupid for Madison. Mike, you are not too stupid for Madison. You enjoyed a lot of it, if I remember correctly. And that's great. I mean, like Iskar Jarek, when he was doing his video, said lasers and fireballs, there's a lot of lasers and fireballs in Malazan, and that's also
I
a way
wanted
to
more
read it,
dinosaurs.
There are a lot more dinosaurs if you keep going. Like the last two books are just like fucking packed with dinosaurs with sword arms.
I read Jurassic Park instead, so
yeah. I don't know if that qualifies as a spoiler. There are dinosaurs with sword arms.
Oops, sorry.
They're coming.
Yeah.
You can look forward to them, Josh and Jordan.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm pumped. That sounds dope.
Yeah.
Great.
I think I reviewed, because I started my channel by doing my Malazan reread, and I was doing a review for each book, and then I realized, like, if you've gotten to the third book, you don't need me to tell you about the fourth book. And I think in the third one, I always do like what's it got at the beginning, just like a list of bullet points of funky things that appear in the books. And I think in the third one, I was like, dinosaurs with sword arms. So yeah.
Amazing.
It's important.
Of course it is. So we're coming up on the 2-hour mark. So maybe to close out, we're early in the year. Has anybody read anything that is truly outstanding that you'd like to share with anybody in the chat? Any 5-star reads starting out the year? Because I know I have one, so I will start. I started my year this year, and I read Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, was it amazing? I can't wait to talk about it in my monthly wrap up. I wanted to. So last year I read Shogun in January, and until Assassin's Fate, it was my best book of the year, and then Assassin's Fate, took the lead at the end. But I wanted to do something similar to see if I could read something really, really good to start the year and kind of set the tone great. And I did. My goodness, Lonesome Dove is amazing.
I'm so happy. That was my number 2 book last year.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. It's so good. I was telling Jimmy the other night, my two favorite fantasy tropes are the fellowship trope and the quest trope. And I realize Lonesome Dove is a fellowship
family.
quest. It just has to be.
Family.
It's in a Western, and it was so well done. Characters, plotting. I mean, it was a 900-page book that I didn't want to end. So
it has. You're so right. It has it has found family. It has animal companions. It has a quest and a fellowship. It has a mustache twirling villain. Like, it has all the things we really want, but in a totally different setting. That book is going to be an all-time favorite, top of the list. I will read it again and again. I watched the miniseries when I was a teenager, like 14, 15. Hadn't seen it since. But since I finished the book in November, I've watched the miniseries twice since then again. Because I can't stop. I want, and I'm going to read the rest of the books at some point probably, because I just want more. But I'm prepared for them to kind of, be on a different level altogether. But man, I love that book.
So is the mini series good? I've never seen it.
Yeah, so it is very 1980s because it was literally just very early 1980s. So some of that aesthetic stuff you might feel like hasn't aged very well, but I mean, it is as accurate as I think a page to screen adaptation could or should be, with some changes that are completely, obvious. But really, the main thing is that you aren't getting the character depth. You're not getting their internal monologue. You're not getting their backstories. But as far as an adaptation goes, it's really faithful, and the casting is just phenomenal. So I love it. I love it.
Nice. Who was Gus and Call?
So it's Robert Duvall and Tommy Lee Jones, right?
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I definitely need to watch it then.
Yeah, Robert Duvall though as Gus is perfect.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Yeah,
so good. And Gus is, anyway.
I bought it in December. It's on my shelf, and I hope to read it before the end of the year. I've never read a Western.
I haven't either.
I'm huge into Western movies, but I've never read a book that would be called a Western. So,
well, they say if you read one, this is the one. And I'll just tell you, I was absolutely blown away by it. It was such a great way to start my year with such an amazing book. So, anybody else read anything great so far this year?
I've got two. First, Trust of the Emerald Sea, the first secret novel of Brandon Sanderson's.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like that book was specifically written for me. It had everything I love in a book, and I ate it up. It was phenomenal. I have a review coming out soon for it. I loved it so much. It was like Brandon Sanderson's take on a fairy tale, but it still has all those Cosmere tie-ins. And I love a fairy tale. So perfect. Loved it. And then also Hellbent. It just came out. It's the second book after Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Very good. Very, very dark, but also very good. I liked it a lot. Very different from the first book too. So
nice.
I'll say something I mentioned earlier, which is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. And I mean, this also gives me a chance to tease something on my channel in an hour. I'll be talking about this book with Philip Chase and Tori, but it's a hard book. It's emotional. It's a guy who was a grunt in Vietnam, writing about being a grunt in Vietnam and about the people he knew who got killed and those kinds of things. But it does so much to give a feeling of what is it like being there? How the soldiers that were there kind of went crazy, all of them in some way. And it's just this weird outside of normal society life that they led for a while. And then how did they deal with coming back to normal society, and what did they bring with them? It's really, really good, but it's quite heartbreaking in a number of places, and hard to read in a number of places because pretty unpleasant stuff, but so well written and such a good book. Really, really good.
Last year I read a kind of an allegory based on that. The Forever War by Joe Haldeman. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It's a science fiction written in the 70s or 80s, and it's basically an allegory of Vietnam. And one of the themes in there is the alienation that the soldiers felt coming back from the war, how they felt they didn't belong to society. And there's a science fiction twist in there that's so well done, but it drives home the theme so very well. I actually read the third book in that series, January, and I gave that one 5 stars as well. It was called Forever Peace. It was very, very different kind of storytelling, but Haldeman's kind of an under the radar sci-fi author. If any of you were looking for something like that, I was pretty blown away by him.
He was also a Vietnam vet, wasn't he?
He was, yes.
Yeah.
And he says with Forever War, he was talking about Vietnam, but he said it can be talking about any war, basically.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just really, and they're really short. That's one thing I like as a contrast to being someone who reads epic fantasy. These amazing works of science fiction that clock in under 300 pages just blow my mind how they're able to do that.
Yeah. So for me, like I said, I've been focusing my schedule this month on the readathon and making sure that I'm setting a good example and like checking all the boxes and stuff. But luckily it's like I'm to the point now where I could max out my points if I wanted to clock everything I've read, but I'm trying to like stagger it so I can like stay present and in the readathon for my team and stuff. But it's allowed me to stagger in some smaller books that kind of just came out of nowhere for me. And of course, like everyone, I'm watching a lot of wrap up content and like getting to see what everyone's book of the year was. So that's making like my future plans like go like bananas, because I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about that book and it was so-and-so's number 1. Like I have to get to it. So I watched Tori's top 10, and of course she loved Never Die and she loved The Outsiders, and I'm reading Never Die right now. And The Outsiders, I had never read it, and I felt like it was one of those books that like literally everybody that me has read it because they all read it in high school and stuff, and I didn't. And so I was like, this book is 230 pages long, like I'm just gonna pick it up and read it. And it is definitely my 5-star book of the year. I don't know if everyone here has read The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton, but it is so phenomenal. And it's just this tidy little tight book that somehow in under 300 pages, she manages to do everything I want a book to do. Like it's I have a very soft spot for a 1960s coming of age group of outcast kids. Like that to me, like I love, Stand By Me and It and Boy's Life and all that kind of stuff are like easy, like hooked. Okay. So she does it, but she does it in this small amount of time. And the way she writes teenage interactions and dialogue and this little community, it just rocked me. And I absolutely loved it. So far The Outsiders is my book of the year. And it's just such an easy little read that like I read it in 2 settings. So I definitely recommend it. If you haven't read it yet, I loved it.
Cool. So Matt, any 5-star reads for you, or should I say 5-star rereads, since it's the year of the reread for you?
Well, I mean, like I said, things they carried. The other thing that's been really interesting, I kept hearing different people talking about short stories last year, and I realized I don't remember the last time I read a short story. So I bought actually 5 or 6 different collections of short stories just to sort of stick in whenever I want, anywhere. And one of them I've started reading. I haven't finished it, but it's The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu.
Oh, it's so good.
And it's stunning. It's so
amazing.
good. I mean, this is structured like it's a collection of short stories, but it's not. It's a continuous story that kind of jumps around in time a little bit, but it is all of the stories in it are connected, but they're all basically short stories. But Ken Liu's is totally just a collection of short stories. None of them, I think, are connected to each other in any way. And specifically the title, the eponymous short story, The Paper Menagerie, is just like also
jaw-dropping. Yeah.
Amazingly written, but also very emotional. Some of them are obviously experiments where he was playing around with different ideas. There's one called The Bookmaking Habits of Different Species or something. And it's like going all around the universe to different planets and describing how different alien races make books, or what they consider what their analog to a book is, which is also, it's very creative, but it's not much of a story really. It's just sort of a list. of creative stuff. But it's an awesome collection of short stories. It's really, really good.
I just added it to my wish list.
Yeah,
it's phenomenal.
It's really, really nice. I couldn't really start Dandelion Dynasty yet because I've got so much big read stuff lined up. But I wanted to try out and get a little taste of his reading. So it's awesome for that. And I mean, they're very short. You can read each of them in 15 minutes, you know.
Nice.
So
they're really
very cool.
Well, we have been here for about 2 hours, and I know Matt has another live stream to go on. Is that on your channel or is that on one of their channels?
That is on my channel, and it's with Tori Talks and Philip Chase, talking about the things they carried and military fantasy sort of in general. I'm kind of planning on just sort of asking them a couple of questions for authors and then sitting back and relaxing. And
there you go.
Letting them talk. So
swing on over to Matt's channel. Do you have any other upcoming videos or anything that our viewers can look forward to seeing soon?
I have this week, because I've never done it before, and I thought it's good to nail it down at some point. I have my top 10 fantasy series, and then a list of fantasy series that I haven't finished or haven't started that I want to. Both of those are coming out this week. I think Monday. Actually, I have a Malazan explainer video. I've heard from so many people so many times over the years that they get into Gardens of the Moon, they get to chapter 2 and they're like, what the fuck is going on? And so I did sort of a breakdown just of chapter 2, the Siege of Pale. So that's Monday, and then I've got the series videos coming out like next Thursday and Monday after that, or something like that.
Cool. Yeah. Everybody make sure you subscribe to Matt so you can see that content coming up. Jordan, what do you have coming up on your channel? I know you posted something I saw this morning right when I got on. You had posted
this morning I posted my most disappointing reads of 2022. And then I have a review for Trust of the Emerald Sea coming out soon. And I filmed something else. I don't remember. And I'm also going to film soon. I finished all 72 volumes of Naruto. So I'm going to talk about that.
Wow, nice.
Okay.
Very cool. Madison, what do you have coming up?
I don't have anything scheduled. Yeah, no, I plan to record. I have plans. My kids are home all weekend, obviously, so I don't do much over the weekends. But tomorrow I have a couple things planned to I have a tag that you tagged me in, Josh, that I'm kind of behind on. So yeah, I've got some things planned for next week. I'm trying to get back into a schedule. I'd like to do 2 videos a week. So we'll see about that, but I'm pretty sporadic. So we'll see.
Yeah, as for my channel, February is a very busy work month. So as I'm wrapping up January, it's probably just going to be once a week for me. But I do have on I think Wednesday, I have a tier list of the 16 book series that I finished out in 2022. Talk about those briefly. And then, like a lot of you, I'm going to start a bunch of top 10 lists. Actually, I don't know if that'll happen in February or March, but the first one I'll do is my top 10 favorite authors and where you can start if you like them. But I want to thank what's that?
I love that.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah, that's going to be fun to put together. But the hardest part is choosing 10 and not 25.
Right.
So, but I want to thank my guests here, Madison Goodyear, Jordan from Jordan Reads, Matt from Matt on Books. Those of you that are watching this live, thank you for hanging out in the chat. It's been cool to interact with you. And if you're watching this after the fact, drop me a comment. And of course, subscribe to all 3 of these channels. They're great people and read great books. And just want to thank you for being here and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you.